My name is Sam. Last Thanksgiving, my family was out of town. I was alone in my small, ordinary house. Our neighborhood is very quiet. Everyone minds their own business. Around 2 p.m., as I was eating the turkey burger I'd made, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. A family was standing at the door. A man and a woman, both in their 40s, and 2 young girls with them, maybe 16 or 17. They were all dressed very neatly, looking like they were coming from some kind of religious service. They had an overly pleasant smile on their faces that felt a bit strange to me. I opened the door, and the man extended his hand. "Hi, I'm Martin. This is my wife, Susan, and these are our daughters, Jessica and Kate. We're your new neighbors, just 2 streets over. We came to wish you a happy Thanksgiving." I shook his hand. "I'm Sam, thank you. Happy holiday to you too." Martin said, "Actually, Sam, we had prepared our lunch today, but we suddenly had an issue with our oven. Susan's pie is ready, but now we have no place to bake it. Could we possibly use your oven for 20 minutes? Just one pie." I hesitated. I don't usually let strangers into my house, but they were a whole family, and it was Thanksgiving. It was a really awkward situation. I said, "Okay, just for 20 minutes, but you'll have to stay with me in the kitchen." Susan immediately walked in carrying the pie on a beautiful wooden tray. Martin stood at the doorway and smiled at the girls. As Susan went into the kitchen, Martin gently closed the door. "Your house is lovely, Sam," Susan said, placing the pie in the oven. "We especially like the look of the back of the house. Your windows are quite open." A sudden wave of panic hit me when she said that. How had they seen the back of my house? Martin and the girls had also walked in by now. They stood in the living room, and Martin was looking at the pictures on my shelf. He commented, "Is your father a doctor? I noticed a monogrammed pen with his name on it. I have a dear friend who is also a doctor." I instantly realized this wasn't a coincidence. These people were telling me things about my parents, who were 200 miles away. I suppressed my anger and said, "The pie will take a little while." Susan replied, "Yes, of course, I'll wait. By the way, you have a fantastic garage. Looks like there's plenty of space to work in there. Do you work on cars?" That was the last straw from Susan. My garage doors were always closed. I hadn't shown them the garage door from the outside either. A bell went off in my head. These weren't thieves, or at least not just thieves. These people knew everything about me, and they were telling me all of it with such polite, cheerful demeanor, which was an unmistakable threat. It was a sign. We are inside. We know who you are. I took a calm breath and deliberately dropped my phone into my back pocket. As I did that, I quietly activated the home alarm through my smart home system. This alarm immediately calls the police and emits an extremely loud sound. "Oh, I think I dropped my phone," I said, bending down. The moment my finger hit the button, a piercing, screaming siren echoed throughout the house. An 80-decibel siren. Susan, Martin, and the girls immediately turned around. Their smiles were gone. Martin's eyes were now cold and empty. Susan shoved the pie tray aside and started moving rapidly toward me. "You shouldn't have done that, Sam," Martin said, almost in a whisper, then had to shout over the siren. "We forced you!" Kate and Jessica, who had been silent until now, rushed through the living room toward my bedroom door, acting like they were familiar with every room in the house. I darted toward the kitchen and lunged for the back door. I had no time. It took me only 5 seconds to reach the door and open it. The cold air hit my face. I looked back for a moment. Susan was running toward me, something gleaming in her hand, and Martin was trying to stop the siren. I ran out of the back lawn toward the woods. The sound of the siren was still echoing behind me, but as I got deeper into the trees, the noise faded. I was running away from my own house. But I knew those people weren't just thieves. They were an organized group who targeted people with full intelligence. They were letting me know they knew everything, and that was the most terrifying thing to me. My entire being was filled with the dread that my home was no longer safe.
If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Also, let me know in the comments how you found the video. Now, let's move on to the next story.
My name is Kira. This happened 2 days after Thanksgiving last year. The holiday was over, and I was driving from Ohio to Indiana to return my brother's car. It was about a 4-hour drive. I started driving around 10 p.m. because I wanted to avoid the next day's traffic. About 2 hours into the trip, I was on a small, isolated highway. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from my car, like something hit the tire. I braked and pulled over to the side of the road. I got out and saw that one of the tires was completely flat. I was instantly gripped by panic because there were no lights and traffic was very sparse on the highway. I grabbed my phone, but the signal kept dropping in and out. I immediately decided to try and change the tire. I was pulling the jack and spare tire out of the trunk when I saw headlights approaching from a distance. The car slowed down and stopped behind me. I felt a slight relief, but that relief immediately turned to fear when 3 men got out. They were all wearing dark, plain jackets, and their faces were expressionless. None of them looked helpful. One of the men, the tallest one, approached me and smiled. "Hey, what are you doing here alone, girl? This road isn't safe at this hour. Is there a problem?" I stammered, I have a flat tire. I'm just trying to change it now. Thank you, but I don't need your help." But he looked at my jack and said, "Don't you think that's too heavy a job for you? We should give you a ride to a safer place." His tone was friendly, but his eyes were completely cold. Meanwhile, the other 2 men were standing silently near the trunk of my car, not looking at the tire, but examining the inside of the trunk. "I really don't need help. My brother knows I'm here, and he'll call back soon." I lied. The tall man fixed his gaze on my lips and took a deep breath. "Very well, but we have a better idea. It's warm in our car. You can relax for a bit, and we'll change your tire." The man was standing very close to me. I caught a faint smell of alcohol on his breath. When I took a step back, his companions, who were standing by the trunk, exchanged a look. The signal was clear. It was time. I realized that if I made a noise or tried to run right now, the 3 of them would immediately grab me. This was not a chance encounter. These men were hunting on this road. Suppressing my fear, I spoke calmly. "Good idea. But do you know the exact spot for the jack? I'll show you." I walked behind them, and as I got close, I pressed the panic button on my car key fob in my pocket with all my strength. My car started emitting a terrifying screaming siren. The 3 men froze for a second, as if they didn't know what it was. That moment was all the advantage I needed. I bolted into the darkness, running toward the bushes on the other side of the highway. I could hear one man shouting, "Get her! Don't let her go!" I didn't look back. I knew they weren't after my car or my belongings. They were only after me. I plunged into the woods, and my legs were being shredded by sharp thorns and rocks. After a short while, I heard another sound in the distance. It was the sound of their car horn. They had gotten back into their vehicle, but instead of chasing me, They were slowly driving forward on the highway, honking repeatedly, as if to say, "You won't be able to hide for long." I waited for an hour, hiding behind a large tree. My phone still had no signal bar. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard the sound of a truck. I immediately dashed out from my hiding spot and ran into the middle of the road, waving my hands frantically. The truck driver, a middle-aged man named Dale, stopped. All I could say was, "Please, take me out of here. Some men are chasing me." He let me into his cab, and we sped away. I told him everything. Dale called the police, but by the time they got back, the strangers and their car were gone. My car was still parked on the side of the road, the trunk open, but nothing was stolen. They hadn't come for theft. They had come for me. Even today, when I stop my car in an isolated place, I always remember that 10 p.m. highway and always check to make sure no vehicle pulls up behind me. My name is Michael, and this happened last year around Thanksgiving. I live in a small apartment in the suburbs of Boston, a slightly older area. My girlfriend, Lori, lives elsewhere in the city. Usually we are with our respective families for the holidays, but this year my parents were going to Dallas and Lori's family was in Miami. We decided we would stay here and cook a Thanksgiving meal together. This was 2 nights before Thanksgiving. I was sitting at my computer, working around 11 p.m. My apartment window faces a quiet street, dimly lit by the yellow glow of the streetlights. Suddenly, I heard a noise outside. It sounded like someone kicked over a metal trash can forcefully. I was annoyed. Who would be making noise at this hour? I looked out the window. There was no one in the street, only the trash can lying on its side and darkness on the road. I ignored it and got back to work. But immediately after, there was another sound. This time, the noise was coming from my door. A light scratch, scratch sound, like someone was trying to pick the lock with a key. I froze. My apartment is on the first floor, and no one has access except for me. It must be someone making a mistake or a drunk neighbor, I thought. I quietly got up, retrieved a baseball bat from my bedroom, and slowly moved toward the door. My heart was pounding a little faster, but I was trying to stay calm. I took a deep breath and asked, "Who is it?" There was no answer. The scratch sound had stopped too. Now there was complete silence outside. I looked through the peephole. A large person was standing right in front of the door. He was wearing a deep blue hoodie. His head was down, and his face was obscured. He had one hand raised, like he was examining the doorknob. I started to panic intensely. This was not a drunk person. This was someone deliberately standing there. I immediately backed away with my mobile phone and quickly texted Lori. "Someone is at my door, wearing a hoodie, standing silently. I'm freaking out." Immediately after, the person laughed softly, a hollow, creeping laugh that cut through the silence like stone. A wave of cold rushed down my spine from that sound. "You're in there, Michael. I know it." He said my name. I froze solid. I was certain I had never seen him before. I raised my hand to call the police, but at that moment he slowly swung his hooded hand and walked toward the window, which was still slightly ajar. I saw his back, and it felt like I was looking at some kind of horror. I quickly ran to the window, slammed it shut, and pulled the curtains. Then I went back to the door and carefully pressed my ear against the wood. No sound. Everything was calm. so calm it was terrifying. I waited for 10 minutes, then grabbed my hammer and secured a piece of wood across the door for extra reinforcement. I sat in a corner for the next half hour. When 10:30 a.m. came, Lori called. "Michael, are you okay? I sent the police to your address." The police came and inspected, but obviously they found no one outside. The street was completely empty. A police officer named Jeff asked, "Does anyone know you're here alone on your social media?" I said, "Maybe. Yes, I posted that I'd be staying home for Thanksgiving this year." Jeff nodded. "Be careful. Keep it locked down for the night. Don't open the door until your girlfriend gets here." They left, but my peace was gone. This wasn't a simple attempted burglary. He knew my name, and he knew I was inside. The next day, Lori arrived at 4 p.m. I told her everything. As she was cutting onions for the stock pot, she stopped. "Michael, look at this," she said, pointing with a knife toward her phone. It was an Instagram photo from a year ago. We had posted a picture of the inside of this apartment where I was sitting and reading a book. There was a comment on that photo. It was brand new, posted at 8 a.m. this morning. The comment had only one word, but it was horrifyingly personal. "I can see you now." A deep chill spread through me. He was hiding somewhere nearby last night, watching my every move. I looked at Lori and just said, "We are not staying here another night." The fear was now seeping out of the floor, the walls, and everything else. I had locked all the doors and windows by early afternoon because I was alone. It was around 7 p.m. when I was watching a movie in the living room, feeling quite relaxed. It was very cold outside, and the house was completely silent. But then I noticed a strange smell. It wasn't the smell of burnt wood or a cigarette. It was something else, like wet earth and decaying leaves. I ignored it, but the smell persisted for the next 2 hours. Around 9 p.m., I went to the kitchen for water, and I felt a faint cold draft coming from the back kitchen window. I checked with my hand. The window was firmly locked, but my suspicion grew. I took my phone and went up to the bedroom, locking the door and bolting it from the inside. Around 10 p.m., something odd happened on my phone. My Wi-Fi name was Emily's Network. Suddenly, my Wi-Fi disappeared, and in its place, a new signal appeared, Guest. I tried to join it again, but it was protected. A little while later, Emily's Network returned, and Guest vanished. This didn't seem like the work of a hacker. It felt like someone was right next to my house and then moved away. I immediately called Lori, my friend, and told her everything. She was frantic and told me to call the police, but I told her I had no proof, just a smell and a Wi-Fi issue. She wasn't satisfied, but I hung up. I tried to compose myself and go to sleep. In the middle of the night, at 12:30 a.m., I had to get up to use the washroom. I looked through the peephole to check outside. Everything was quiet on the street. No cars, no birds. But as I was returning from the washroom, I noticed my bedroom doorknob closely. There was a slight detail. There was a very faint, thin dent on my doorknob. It looked like someone had pressed against it with the tip of a nail or a screwdriver. This dent was so tiny I would never have noticed it under normal circumstances, but in the silence, my eye immediately caught it.
This proved that someone was trying to open my bedroom door. I lay back on the bed, my eyes wide open. I checked the time on my phone, 1 a.m. Suddenly, my bedroom lamp, which was on my desk, flickered on and off once, like someone turned the main switch on for a second and then turned it off. This lamp was not connected to the living room switchboard. It had its own separate plug. In that moment, my heart leapt into my throat. This wasn't an electrical fault. Someone had deliberately, very slowly, unplugged and replugged my lamp inside my bedroom. I slowly lifted the bedsheet and crawled under the bed. My breathing echoed in my ears. I stayed there silently for 10 minutes. Then I heard a very soft, muffled sound on the floor. It wasn't footsteps, but the sound of a rubber sole rubbing on the floor, passing right next to my bed. He was in my room. Just then, a notification popped up on my phone screen, and its light was faintly visible under the bed. It was a warning from my smart door lock. Main door lock disabled at 1:15 a.m. Before I could process that, I felt someone stop right next to my bed. The bed sheet was gently pulled up. The person leaned down to look. He could see my face. Before he could do anything else, I dialed 911 from under the bed. I connected the call and wrapped the phone in a sock under the bed so the sound wouldn't escape. The police would certainly not get an answer, but they would trace the call. When he fully lifted the sheet, I leapt out from the other side of the bed and rushed into the washroom, slamming the door shut. I was shaking inside the washroom, listening to what the person was doing in the room. He was breathing heavily. Then I felt a strong push against the washroom door, and the handle slipped from my hand. Then I heard the sound of the door breaking. It took the police 15 minutes to arrive. When they got there, the room was empty. My door had signs of being broken, but the police truthfully said, "Everything inside seems fine." But one thing was missing. Under my pillow, where I kept my bedtime reading book, there was a small notebook where I had written down all my passwords. That notebook was gone. It was never found. I sold the house, but even today when I look at Wi-Fi signals, I don't see one named Guest, but I definitely hear that faint shuffling sound in my mind.